Hello and welcome to MetroArts. I'm your host, Sophia Sanchez. Here on MetroArts, we highlight some of the best in the business, from fine artists, photographers, and performing artists, to cinematographers and musical artists, all from the Metro Detroit area. On today's show, we have metal work designer Gabriel Craig, international photojournalist Monica Morgan, and indie band Red Tape Riot is here to light up the Midtown Studio. With us now in the Midtown Studio is the co-owner of Smith Shop, Gabriel Craig. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Sophia.
Let's start with the basics. What is Smith Shop?
Well, Smith Shop is a custom metalworking studio in Corktown in a building called Pony Ride. And we do everything from custom goldsmithing and jewelry making all the way to architectural blacksmithing. So we do a lot of things that are in between those two sizes, you know, really small and, you know, very large. But really what we tend to focus on is functional and ornamental metalwork that requires a high level of skill and design experience and, you know, creative problem solving, engineering, and training.
That's really interesting.
We also teach classes and workshops. So really, you know, it's a place where we can share what we love to do, which is work with metal.
Cool. What got you interested in metalworking?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I grew up in a family where no one worked with their hands at all. I always love to tell the story that my dad was a salesman, and his dad was a salesman, and his dad was a horse thief.
Nice.
So not a history of working with our hands, which is really strange for growing up in Metro Detroit. And so I was really into painting and photography in high school, and I knew that I was, you know, really drawn to creative fields. And I went to art school at Western Michigan University, studying photography, and I took a metalsmithing class. And that was the first time I really started to use tools. And you know, I had a hammer in my hand, and I was forming metal, and all of a sudden I realized what my opposable thumb was actually there for. And you know, I really started to, through working with metal, see the world as someone who builds things rather than someone who consumes things. And so that like shift in how I interacted with the world, you know, changed, you know, my trajectory in life, and it gave me agency over this built environment around me.
That's really cool. Your shop is located in Southwest Detroit in Pony Ride. How did that partnership start?
So yes, we were living in Houston, my wife and I, Amy, who's also the co-owner and the founder of Smith Shop, and she had moved back to the Detroit area to attend graduate school at Cranbrook Academy of Art. And right around the time she was finishing school, we knew that we wanted to start a metalworking shop that had, you know, this very, you know, public-facing component that we're open to people coming in and giving us commissions and making production work and having classes so that there would be some sort of exchange. And so we sort of cast our net wide. I was working as blacksmithing in my garage and jewelry making in my basement. And we knew we needed more room, obviously, and we wanted to launch this bigger thing. So just you know, connections with other artists. We had a really good friend who was a letterpress printer who had a printing press called Stukenberg Press, who was actually the first tenant at Pony Ride. And so Pony Ride started as a foreclosed building that was purchased by Phil Cooley. And you know, he had this idea to create it into this creative, he had this idea to turn it into a creative entrepreneurial space. And so you know, we sort of met him and the other people working on Pony Ride through Brian Baker of Stukenberg Press. And then, you know, there were some other, you know, Detroit's a small town, so there were other people we knew, and there were other intersections, but that was, you know, basically how we got connected. So what we were hoping to do, I think was a good fit for what Pony Ride was envisioning itself as at the time. That's
really cool. Tell us a little bit about what you brought today.
Sure. So this is an example. This is of a few different things that we make in different materials, and most of this is smaller than a bread box, right? So you know, sort of the middle range in terms of scale of what we make. These right here are our production serving spoons, and so these are hand-forged steel and hand-formed copper, and they you know, are serving spoons, and then they're riveted together. So we do a lot of serving ware. We do spatulas as well. Nice. Some a little simpler, others, you know, a little bit more complex with patterning. And we kind of explore a lot of different shapes and variations, while we're at the forge, let the creative juices flow, right? Candlesticks that are forged and fabricated, hooks, fancy hooks, hardware, something we do. So decor, functional servingware, hardware. We also make belt buckles. So these are some brass belt buckles that I brought. And then, of course, our hand-forged, recycled sterling silver flatware. So this is a production item that we're working on right now.
What's the creative process from beginning to end for some of these pieces?
Right, so they're all different, right?
Yeah.
So each form is a little bit different in how we go about it. Actually creating it is different, but for a new design, let's say, or a new commission, there's 6 of us at Smith Shop. There's myself and my wife Amy, who's the co-owner, and then Adam Whitney, who's a really prolific silversmith, and the 3 of us are partners as owners. And then we have a full-time metalsmith, a part-time metalsmith, and an intern. And so we all get together, we sit down, we talk about the project, we talk about the parameters of the project, we talk about our target costs and all those things, and we have all that input. And then you sit down and you really start hashing out a design. And we approach everything pretty creatively, collaboratively.
Yes. Yeah.
And we kind of try and remove the ego as much as possible, because our goal is ultimately to create the best metal object that we can. And so I think that we kind of celebrate everyone's experience and everyone's expertise. So once we have a design, and that process might be really quick, it might be a little bit longer depending on how many iterations we go through in the design phase, then we'll purchase the materials and then start creating it. And so that can be anything from forging hot steel, and then chiseling it, as in the case with some of these pieces, or it can be cutting and silver soldering and building forms through fabrication that are non-ferrous or without iron in them.
Yeah. So it sounds like a really intricate and collaborative process.
Yeah.
Where can we learn more about you and Pony Ride?
So our website is smithshopdetroit.com, and Pony Ride's website is ponyride.org. We also are on Facebook, Smith Shop Detroit on Facebook and Instagram, and you can come visit us at 1401 Vermont Street. Okay,
thank you so much for joining us.
Yep, thanks a lot.
You're watching MetroArts on Detroit Public Television. And now let's welcome photographer Monica Morgan to MetroArts Detroit. Welcome.
Hello.
How did you get started in photography?
Well, a lot of people think it's because my grandfather was a photographer, but I had no desire whatsoever to take photos when I was growing up. It wasn't until after I started working with the Detroit Public Schools as an adult education PR coordinator that I started to take photos, because they said, if you want this job, you have to be able to shoot pictures. So I started to do it and enjoyed it. And then I started to write with the Michigan Chronicle on the side, and they wouldn't pay me for my articles, but they would pay me for the photos that accompanied the articles. Wow. So I said, well, maybe I need to look more at photography, because with writing, you could get into writer's block and trying to figure out a lead. But with a photo, either you got it right or you didn't, and I just started to enjoy that more.
That's interesting. So you're known as an international photographer, and you've covered some pretty dangerous situations, such as the bombs in South Africa, 9/11, Katrina, refugee camps in Darfur. What compelled you to take those risks?
I just always wanted to tell the true story from my perspective. I always thought there was a lot of sensationalism with various world events that were going on. And so I wanted to go over with my camera and tell the true story.
You've covered a lot of many people from different walks of life, including Maya Angelou, Fidel Castro, Muhammad Ali, to Rosa Parks and the Clintons. What was that like?
Well, every person was different. Rosa Parks, wonderful. Genuine, nice, friendly, warm. She was the same behind the camera as she was in front of the camera, and she called me a great photographer and her dear friend.
That's wonderful.
To photograph world leaders such as Nelson Mandela, that was amazing, because he was amazing. And again, there was something that always came over me when I was around him, because he was just so genuine and inspirational. The Clintons, full of power, you know, to be around them and to see them in action while President Clinton was actually a seated president, to be in the Oval Office and be able to see him in action. You know, those are moments that I won't ever be able to forget.
You were the first photographer to submit digital images to the Michigan Chronicle, Ebony, and Jet magazines. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it was years ago when digital photography was first starting, and there was a moment when I was documenting the Trumpet Awards in Atlanta, and I actually had my computer on the floor, and I didn't realize that looking over my shoulder was Lerone Bennett and Judge Greg Mathis. And so as I was taking the photos, I was downloading them into my computer, and they were amazed that what they were seeing was actually going into my computer. So Lerone Bennett said, "Oh, we want you to work for Ebony and Jet." And I wasn't interested in having a job, but I started to freelance with them. And I was doing the same thing with the Michigan Chronicle, taking photos and emailing them, so it started to become a tradition, and here we are a few years later.
That's so interesting. And you've actually documented a lot of important moments in Nelson Mandela's life, and you mentioned that a bit earlier. Tell us about that.
Well, I went over to South Africa in 1994. I documented the first race elections. I documented Nelson Mandela's inauguration. I also covered a bomb that went off a few days prior to the elections. And I went back and covered his retirement, his 90th birthday party at his home, and then his final rites recently.
It's been said that you actually want to start a photography school. Tell us about that, or what can your students expect from you?
Well, I believe it's important to give back. So I'm always mentoring young people, taking them with me to various places. I've taken students to Rosa Parks' home. I've taken them with me to cover major events, because I think you need to be exposed to things early in life, and that can help you determine what you want to do for the rest of your life. And so with my school, I would believe in taking young people to various situations so they would get hands-on experience. I would teach them business skills, as well as the etiquette that's involved in being a photographer. I've been able to get into a lot of situations because I looked the part, and I felt as if I belonged and acted as if I belonged. And that made a difference to me getting into some situations that otherwise I might not have been able to. So I think all of those things go into photography, not just the craft of actually taking the image.
Wow. And some of your clientele has included celebrities. What was that like?
Every day is different, different personalities. I'd almost say you have to take a psychology class in order to deal with a lot of the celebrities, because they're people, but some of them have special needs because they're so used to people catering to them. And so I think I've kind of developed a knack for dealing with people from all walks of life and people from various cultures as well.
Interesting. What photo experience has changed your life?
Wow, there have been so many. Actually taking the only photograph of Rosa Parks in the actual seat that she sat in on one of the buses that she had ridden during the Montgomery bus boycott. That was an amazing time, because she actually talked about her experience and what happened that day when she refused to give up her seat. To have photographed Nelson Mandela raising his hand, I mean, a man who had once been a prisoner, a man who didn't see his children grow up, who gave up all of those rights because of something that he believed in, to be there that moment when he raised his hand. I mean, that's something that will always be etched in my memory. And then even the controversial moments of photographing people like Muammar Gaddafi during his 30th and 40th revolution celebration, to be the only American, the only African American, and the only African American woman there during those times. Just moments that I can't tell you what those experiences have meant.
And what can you tell an up-and-coming photographer?
Don't become discouraged. You have to find what works for you. You can't be like someone else. You can't be, you can't say, well, that's a photographer, I'm going to be just like that person, because you don't know the walk of life that they had to go through to get to where they are. You have to be you. And by that, I mean taking lots of photographs to determine what's your niche, where you can find yourself in life. I don't really like shooting sports, but I've shot sports. I don't like weddings anymore, but I've shot weddings. But I had to do it in order to determine that's not what I want. So to a young photographer, an up-and-coming photographer, I'd say, just go and experience life, document everything, and then when you find out what you enjoy, what you're good at, perfect it and give your all to it.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Monica.
Thank you.
You're watching MetroArts, produced at the Midtown Studio at Wayne State University. And now, let's welcome Tape Riot to the Midtown Studio. They're here to perform Invincible.
Confident to force your eyes to see the end. Aren't you listening? I fear the worst. I'm enchanted, but it's a curse. Leave me invincible tonight. Are you confident to force your eyes to see the end? Are you listening? I feel the worst. I'm enchanted, but it's a curse. Leave me invincible tonight.
That was great. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Can you tell us about the song that you just performed?
Invincible is about having a tough skin and not letting what other people say get you down.
Nice. Do you want to introduce yourself and the rest of the band members?
Yeah, I'm Mark Pilato. I play guitar and sing. We got Pat Weirs on bass, Jeff Weirs on drums, and Todd Schoeneman on guitar and vocals.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
what are your
out.
musical influences?
Personally, I listened to a lot of blues growing up, you know, classic rock, And but as far as everybody else goes, it's kind of different. Everybody has their little different influences. So when we come together, it works out. You know, we all get different aspects of music in there.
Nice. So what kind of genre or style is your music?
We always had a tough one with that, just because we feel like we don't really sound like anybody else out there. But I mean, I feel like that's probably what every band says out there. But kind of like an alternative rock. We compare ourselves to like earlier Incubus sometimes, Kings of Leon, but throw in, you know, like the blues, like some Pink Floyd, you know, just melodic melodies, you know, it's just, yeah, a lot of different influences.
Nice. Who writes your music, or what's the process of writing?
Well, Todd writes 99% of the music. He'll come to us with like kind of a raw song, and we'll all get together and kind of just add our little bits here and there, and we might hear something the Pat's playing or something Jeff's playing, and then that's where we all kind of steer towards, you know, because we'll be like, that's it, you know, that's how this song should go, you know, where the direction of the song, and then we all kind of jump on board with it.
So it's sort of collaborative.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice.
Absolutely.
So where have you performed?
We performed all over Michigan, a little bit in Toledo. Locally, we played Hard Rock, we played U Detroit Cafe. Out in Mount Clemens, we played Emerald Ballroom. I don't even know if that's there anymore. Hayloft, yeah, all over. But our favorite place was probably Lansing. We opened up for Brian Vander Ark, the lead singer of Verve Pipe, at the Loft, and that was a lot of fun.
Where can we find out more about you?
You can check us out at redtaperiot.com, and from there you can get links to our Facebook, iTunes, where you can buy it, stream, SoundCloud, all sorts of any dates that we might have.
Cool.
Yeah, all on there.
Tell us about your next song.
Next song is called Feel the Sun. It's kind of just about like emerging from the darkness into the light.
Awesome. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks again.
Here again is Red Tape Riot. You're watching MetroArts on Detroit Public Television.
So dark, lift me out from under myself, 'cause I'm tired and worn out. You and I spend together, never find it. So cold, can you hear it? Skies are cold, clouds but they're clearing. Hands are tired, I know we'll be red. Feel the sun while you're still young. Wanna feel the sun while you're still young. Wanna feel the sun while you're still young. Want me your arm, let me breathe the air, a longing to fill my lungs. This is a fight, and the loser sleeps in fear. Never find it. So cold, can you hear it? Skies are cold, clouds but they're clearing. Hands are tied, I know you'll be red. Gonna feel the sun while you're still young. Gonna feel the sun while you're still young. Gonna feel the sun while you're still. So cold, can you hear it? The clouds are clearing. I know you'll be red. Wanna feel the sun
We hope you enjoyed today's show. I would like to thank our guests, Gabriel Craig, Monica Morgan, and Red Tape Riot. Remember, you can watch any of our shows online at MetroArtsDetroit.com and find us on social media. I'm your host, Sophia Sanchez, reminding you to seek out inspiration and explore the arts in your community.